Hiya, I'm Jasper, and welcome to your video review for Star Trek Voyager, Season 6. So, as always, I'm going to give you the good, the bad, and the furry. To start with furry, it's Star Trek, so there's aliens that are kind of furry-esque, and then it's a later season as Voyager, so there's some furry-esque CGI type aliens, and yeah, moving on to the good and the bad. So, start off with Equinox Part 2. Pretty much the same things that I liked about the first one. I liked having Bosch in it. I liked that the guy from Dark Angel was in it. And I loved how he commanded. I loved the crew interaction. And still have the same complaints from the first episode as this one. But I thought that how they concluded it was good. I thought that it made sense where you get rid of the baddies, have the noble sacrifice and the redemption from the captain. And I also liked that they added more Starfleet crew, because there've been a few of them killed over the past few years, so you start to wonder, how are they able to man those same positions with those losses, and now they have some extra Starfleet crew mixed in now to kind of make up for that difference. Next is Survival Instinct. I'm not really a fan of this episode. I would say that it's one of the weaker episodes. The Triborg thing, I mean, it was, oh, hey, we finished these other sentences, I mean, that was kind of uniquely done, but I didn't like, first of all, the distance from where this would have happened, how far Voyager has traveled to now, and having those people somehow catch up doesn't really make sense to me. And then also just how quickly the Borg started being like, I this and I that, and starting to remember their childhood and whatnot. It really cheapens some of the struggles that Seven went through to initially regain some of her stuff. So not so much of a fan of this episode. Moving on to The Barge of the Dead, I thought that it was an interesting presentation of religion and religious practices and the philosophy thereof, and how far you should be willing to let your crew or people in your organization exercise their religious practices, even if you don't necessarily agree with them. But the other aspect of it, where B'Elanna's like, I don't like being Klingon again, oh man, we've seen this before, and we'll see it again with B'Elanna, get over it. I feel like there's just a bit too much of that with B'Elanna. And then also, sometimes I like when a episode or a movie lets you decide on your own conclusion, but in this case, I didn't like how they ended it, where was she just a crazy person, or was she actually helping her mother in the Stove Corps? Because I don't think that they adequately answered that, or adequately left it up for interpretation. I think that it was very clear one way, and they didn't make it make sense the other way, enough to leave it open as they did, because they didn't really, but without satisfying. You know what I mean? So, not a great episode, in my opinion, overall. But the next episode, Tinker Tenor Dr. Spy, I absolutely loved. It's where we first get to see the Doctor be the ECH, the Emergency Command Hologram. And I loved how we got the boop, 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 boop of the pips going on to his rank. I love that. I love the photonic cannon. I thought that the villains in this episode were just the right amount of threatening, but also goofy, that it worked all around, and I loved getting to see the Doctor, oh god, everybody's finding out about this, the Daydream thing, but also him getting put on the bravado of the Emergency Command Hologram. And I really love, and spoiler alert for later episodes, but you're watching this, so I'm assuming you've seen the show already and just want to hear what I have to say about it. But, spoiler alert for later episodes, I love that they actually make the Emergency Command Hologram later. I super enjoy that they were it actually is not the worst idea in the world, that if everybody else had a GTFO because of, and as is the episode showed, radiation, that he could take over and continue being in command. And I love that. I thought that it was such an amazing payoff. This episode was great, but the payoff just made it even better. It's awesome. So, yes. Next is Alice. Maybe it's because I've seen the episode too many times, but I feel like I've seen the episode too many times. And I feel like that we've seen this kind of thing with Tom Paris too many times, where something new comes along, and he starts ignoring B'Elanna, and then their relationship suffers, and it turns out there's a bad thing. So, especially with the last episode that we had of, not the last episode, but the episode that Tom Paris got replaced by the body guy who would, swap bodies with people. We essentially already had that, because he was working on a shuttle, and then we also had the Delta Flyer shuttle thing, and now we have Alice. So, it draws a bit too much of the same territory, and in the episode with the Demon Planet Voyager people, how they got married, that one they seemed happy, and it would make sense a little bit more, and I was happy that they showed that. But in the actual Voyager crew, that didn't dissolve, other than their initial like getting togetherness, I don't understand why they're together, because of things like this, where every single time something new comes along, Tom Paris is immediately distracted by it and spends all his time with it and ignores B'Elanna, and then she gets all butthurt about it, and it's super frustrating that like clearly she is not his priority ever. And it's not all one-sided, because, for example, and I don't think it was this episode, I think it was a later episode, but she replicates him an old school style like CRT TV with a bunch of dumb black and white cartoons and gives him a bowl of popcorn. And so he proceeds to sit down and like, ha ha ha, and like giggle his fucking face off and eating the popcorn and just ignore her for the rest of the night. So, he ignores her after all of this work. Like, she used her replicator rations, she paid attention to what he liked, she thought of something really thoughtful, got him all set up with something company, and then he proceeds to fucking ignore her the entire rest of the night. Very douchey of him. But at the same time, B'Elanna gives him this thing, knowing the type of personality that he has, that she sets it up for something that will absorb all of his attention, and then is butthurt when the thing that she has given him to absorb all of his attention absorbs all of his attention. So you can't just be like, here's the thing that I want you to pay attention to. Oh, you're paying attention to it. Damn. Like, yeah, he is. So neither of them were right in that situation, but it's that sort of thing where they are just operating on totally different planes, and I don't think that they work. Anywho, moving on. Riddles was the next episode, and I love Riddles. I love a Tuvok episode. This was a fantastic Tuvok episode because you got to see the actor who plays Tuvok playing Tuvok without like the logic and the barrier, like where he got to be more fun. So he is still Tuvok, but without some of those personality suppression things that he practices. So I think that was awesome because I love Tuvix as an episode, but you know, they had a different actor playing them, and in this one, Tuvok is being played by the same actor who plays Tuvok. So I think that's fantastic. And I love fun Tuvok. I love dessert Tuvok. I want to see more of that. I like that he was finally fucking nice to Neelix. I think that was about damn time. Also, I think that for Tuvix, there is definitely an argument to be had for which way they should have gone, either keeping Tuvix or bringing back Neelix and Tuvok. I think that is a question that I'm glad I didn't have to answer. But with this one, I kind of feel like they could have used a different tactical officer. At this point in the show and in the series, like, you would think that Night Shift Tactical would be able to do what he couldn't. I kind of wish we had been able to keep Fun Tuvok. So, do you think that he should have stayed Fun Tuvok or not? Let me know what you think and why in the comments down below. Anyhow, so moving on to Dragon's Teeth. I think it's kind of fun that they have corridors in this one. So they have corridors method of travel, they have slipstream, they have warp 10, they have regular warp, and they have trans warp. So the corridors are just another way of traveling fast, but in a slightly different method. So it's fun to see. It's also fun to see that the episode where it's like, hey, not everything appears as it is initially, so just because these people appear to be your friends, maybe they aren't. Or like, hey, the people that you initially team up with because they seem like the good guys, maybe they aren't. And I think it's funny that I don't know which came first. I assume Voyager, but there was a Stargate SG-1 episode so similar to this. Teaming up with some people, and then you find out they're really bad people, possibly, and just that whole thing, like, very similar episodes. So that's kind of fun. Next is One Small Step, which I really enjoyed that episode because I thought that the early ship that they showed was just absolutely fantastic, and the guy that they had playing him was just phenomenal. I loved every single one of his log entries. I just really enjoyed this episode, and the CGI for all the exterior shots was really well done. So just fantastic episode. This is one of the greats, and I think it's one of the most memorable, and it also was a great episode to have Seven get some development, because for so long she's just like, straight line, back to the Alpha Quadrant is what you should be doing. Why are you stopping on all these bullshit side quest things? But she's not a Vulcan, she's not totally logic, she's not Data, she's not devoid of emotion and whatnot. So her finally discovering, like, oh, this is what it feels like to care about exploration, and the thing that Starfleet is ostensibly for, was awesome. I really enjoyed that. next was the Voyager conspiracy. So it was fun to see just Seven coming up with all these crazy conspiracies, and it was an interesting way to do it, to have her absorb just all this massive amount of information and showing that, like, when you try and process all this stuff, you'll just start like, yes, here and here and here and here and here. So that was kind of fun. And it was also really fun because if you think about it, it's like, hey, this is the same data, the same exact data set. You can skew it one way, where the Maquis are the bad ones having all these terrible plans, or skew it another way, where Starfleet is all the ones with the secret plans and going against things and yada, yada, yada. But it's the same data set. So I think that it's a great example of how statistics and data and what you choose to emphasize and what have you, that can skew things so much based on your analysis and interpretation and presentation of those facts. So bravo for that. However, what I didn't like about it is that I don't buy Chakotay and Janeway turning on each other as they did. Like, maybe if you stretch really far, it's sort of like, maybe I could buy Chakotay believing that Starfleet was trying to set up Alpha Quadrant stuff. But in no world does it make any sense for Janeway to remotely believe the bullshit that she was spouting about Chakotay. Doesn't make any sense at all. It was dumb. So that part was dumb, but overall I think the message of the episode was good. Next was the Pathfinder. I guess Obsession gets results. It's kind of funny because, yeah, we have Barclay again, and we're going to have Barclay a few more times in this show, and I think it's funny that I haven't done the math, but it almost feels like we get more Barclay in Voyager than we do in Next Generation. But, you know, I like him as a character. It's fun. So, cool. Let's do this. And then Fairhaven. I love Fairhaven episodes. I love Fairhaven in general. I love the characters, and I love seeing Janeway in a more relaxed atmosphere and having that relationship with that guy. I like seeing her with a guy that is actually her, not necessarily intellectual match, but just a good match rather than that bullshit season 1 governess nonsense that they tried to fit her into. That was just terrible. This one actually made sense, and it was fun, and I liked him as a character, and I liked their interactions. It was just really fun to see her develop a relationship with somebody who wasn't like a subordinate in her crew, because that will always tinge how she interacts with them versus somebody who is, you know, a hologram, sure, but also not within her chain of command. So that was fun. Next was Blink of an Eye. This is one of my favorites of all time. I think there was a Stargate SG-1 episode similar to this one, but I like this one better. And I love being able to see the rapid development of that planet and how that one thing, like Voyager hanging out in the sky and earthquakes that it causes, can impact the entire development of the entire civilization on there. I think that's a fantastic thing to consider and to philosophize about, because what big thing or things, either in the environment or in the night sky or whatever, do you think has had that sort of impact on our existence here? How do you think having Voyager chilling up there might have changed how fast or how we developed, how religions develop, how technology and everything else? So it's really fun to see and to have them talk about and even show some examples of the changes that were taking place because of that environmental difference from having Voyager and the earthquakes. So that was absolutely fantastic. I love it, and I think it's worth repeat viewing on this one. Then the next episode, Virtuoso. So in Blink of an Eye, Doctor was useful and could have had a whole like mini-series about his time down there because, 3 years, man, or 5 years, 7 years, whatever it was. Still, regardless, years, long time, to think that now he's back at Voyager. Like, how has that changed him as a person? And what about the person that he left there? Did he ever tell that person that, like, hey, one of these days I might just disappear, so do something. Like, if I just disappear, it's because I've been transported back. Don't come looking for me. Don't pine after me for years. Don't put up missing posters everywhere because you're never going to find me again. So that part's a little sad. But anywho, so good Doctor bit there. Then we go to Virtuoso, and we've seen the Doctor making an ass of himself before. We will see him do it again. So rewatching these episodes, because of how many there are, it's a little tiresome, because of course people who have never developed music or singing by themselves won't appreciate a person for themselves, and of course they're just going to create a better version of you to replace you. That being said, I think that the important part of this episode was a look at what fame can do to you, because you're the it thing, you're amazing, everybody loves you, until they don't. Either the next star comes along and that's where their focus is and you're just forgotten about, or something terrible happens, and now you're shunned, and so you're trash, and they move on to the next thing, and all of what you thought were the people that you could rely on, your adoring fans, and everybody who loves you, doesn't. They love the thing that you made, or the fame that you brought, or whatever else you brought to the table, but not you. And so, hey, know who your real friends are, and I think that's the important message. I don't think maybe necessarily all of our Star Trek cast needed to necessarily worry about that, because I think it's more of a symptom of movie stars rather than certain television stars, but it's still an interesting thing to have out there. The next episode was Memorial, and I hated this episode with a burning passion, and I will continue to hate this episode because it is despicable that they basically gave the whole crew PTSD to just have this happen because of a computer glitch, because of a thing breaking down, and then the captain's like, nah, we can't get rid of those memories. We can't cure the PTSD because that would cheapen the memories that were unwillingly forced upon these people. So your crew just happened to stumble in. Like, it would be different, in my opinion, if there was some buoy out there saying, like, hey, this is an important historical event, and you should feel it in its entirety. Do you wish to proceed? And then they go. And then they get all PTSD. Yeah, maybe. Like, you could argue how detailed the explanations would be for what you're going to experience, but regardless, they would have made that conscious choice to have something traumatically delivered. They didn't make that choice in this one. They shouldn't have to live with those consequences. It's bullshit. Moving on. The next one was Tunskatske. I love that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was in it. I love that he did the eyebrow thing, since that was still during that WWE era. Maybe WWF, whatever. I think it might have been WWF at the time, or maybe they'd already changed it to WWE. Regardless, he was in it, and it was great, and I love seeing that. Also, I love that General Martok was in it. Yeah, he was playing a Hirogen, but I love the actor. I love the gravitas that he brings. I love the voice. I love the attitude. I love what he brings to a character. So it's fantastic to see. And then I also liked to think about, what effect sports has on people, both the players and the public and the organizations running them. Think about how this episode could be applied or thought about in regards to the Major League Baseball, to the National Football League, to, boxing back when Rocky and whatnot were super popular. What about MMA currently? So things like that. Just think about how that can apply and what things people would do for that. It's fun. Next is the Collective. So yay for more Ichib, or for the Ichib intro, sorry. So I like that we finally get to see Ichib. I love Ichib. I've been waiting for Ichib, so the fact that we finally bring him in, I am super happy about. But what I don't necessarily buy is the fact that the Borg leave that vessel. Because I think that explanation that they give later on once you meet Ichib's parents makes it make a little bit more sense. But for that episode specifically, I don't think that they adequately explained why that happened. And even with the explanation from the future episode, I still think they would have just come back and blown the ship up rather than leave it there. But whatever. Moving on to Spirit Folk. I'm a Miss Fairhaven. I loved Fairhaven. I would have liked to have more episodes, but I understand it was probably a really big set and cost-wise to get all those actors, schedules coordinated and whatnot. But I love Fairhaven, and I'm glad that we got to see it again. And I'm glad that the Captain's Boo is the one that got to do all the explanations and going around and learning things about the Voyager crew on the starship, so that was good. And just a fun episode. Just a good, fun episode. Next is Ashes to Ashes. Oh, poor Harry Kim, always falling in love with the wrong girl. What I didn't like about this episode is that if the universal translator is a universal translator and translates things, there should never have been a time where she's speaking English, switches to her native language to say some funny words, and then switches back to English to make her appear as other to the crew. Because it's universal translator, it should have just translated what she said in real time like it does with all the other languages, basically. And it didn't, so I didn't think that that made sense. But I do appreciate that this episode is a great way to think about how sometimes you change enough to where your relationships change, and maybe the people that you were close with in the past may not be the people that you're meant to be close with in the future. And, yeah, you can think about, like, maybe they've changed, maybe you've changed, but people change regardless, and in this episode they showed that she changed enough that she was not meant to be with her old friends and what have you, and that she had a new life and she needed to continue down that despite missing and having nostalgia for her old life. So I thought that was it's a great thing to show that Star Trek episode and that sci-fi can do, because it uses sci-fi elements to talk about a real truth and a real thing and a real philosophy. So next we had Child's Play, where we get to meet Ichib's parents. Fuck Ichib's parents for not only doing this to him like the first time, but also the second time. Like, I don't care if that's what he was designed for and made for to begin with. Like, fuck you for doing this to a living, breathing person. Twice. That being said, it's fun that his dad is Crowley. If you've seen Supernatural, that's fucking Crowley. But, like, before second puberty, it seems like. It's so funny to see him and hear his voice as he is in this one. There's no accent, and it's much lighter. It's so fun to see that. But, in general, fuck his parents. Also, getting rid of the other kids makes sense, because we just basically care about Ichib, and Ichib can be the foil and the person that is able to show things from a younger Borg perspective to help assist Seven, where it's like, hey, you have Seven Borg and younger Borg, and how those can play off each other, and not just the other ones with Naomi. And also, I imagine that having that many kids on set was probably expensive and hard to coordinate, because child labor laws and whatnot. So I think it made sense to have those leave, but keep Ichib, and I'm glad they did. Next was the Good Shepherd. It is kind of like the Tuvok training episode, but not as good. Meh. The other thing that I didn't like is they made a whole thing during the Seven time traveling to before Voyager launched episode that she's like, I've been studying these schematics for 6 months. I know my way around this better than anybody. I can do this with my hands blindfolded. And then in this episode, she's getting lost for where she is on deck 15. Don't buy it for a second. No, you didn't need to emphasize that piece of it so much for her. That kind of grinds my gears, because it's her ship. She would know her ship better than all of that. So, that's just my thoughts on the matter. Next was Live Fast and Prosper. So ID theft, I guess, is still a thing. It was kind of a meh episode overall, but I liked the funny, the fake Tuvok was kind of funny, because he just was so into his role that he's like, perhaps the crew of the Voyager would blah, blah, blah. She's like, yeah, we're not playing them anymore. Come on, get your shit together, man. So that was kind of fun. And then Muse, Voyager, what I like about it is that Voyager and Star Trek in general is enough to be theater. And so it, a lot of theater looks at philosophical things and big picture and big ideas. And I like that this episode really showed that hey, Star Trek can be that for many episodes. Not all of them and not all the movies, but enough of them that, hey, look, in this ancient Greece / Shakespearean setting, you are able to use the episodes and the crew logs and the things that happened in Voyager the show as theater, and it make good. So I really enjoyed that. Then next is Fury. Kes, the actor, gained a bit of weight. I'm not saying she's fat, but you can definitely see that she weighed more than Kes when they were playing her in season 1. So I just wonder how much of that they had to reshoot because of that, versus trying to insert shots from when she was skinny, but without skinnier anyway, without having to reshoot them. So it was fun. I like Kes. I like the actress's portrayal of her. I liked seeing her again, and so I thoroughly enjoyed that. But the logic behind the episode, and that okay, so now that she did this one thing, and then they stopped her back there, they're going to tell Kes to send herself a message that they're going to play for when she comes back. And it's I think it breaks the timeline too much, because then from that very early stage on, Kes knows that she's going to leave at some point and come back years later from that. So I think that changes the entire rest of her interactions with the crew from that point forward. So I think it breaks things a little bit, sort of like how the episode with Picard where he plays, that flute thing and he lives a whole life where he has kids, that kind of changes his outlook on kids for the whole rest of the show. Not exactly the same thing, but you see that this one thing can have implications for things moving forward. Anywho, and then from there, Lifeline, I like having multiple Robert Picardos, so that was fun. To see him arguing with himself a whole bunch. I thought that they did the timing great and the interactions great, so they were really using that doubles and the technology used to have somebody argue with themselves, and they did it very well. And it was a great example of showing why sick people sometimes don't want to be treated, and how you can get around that, and why they might not want to be treated, as well as how you might be feeling if your life's work that you pour your heart, body, and soul into is just tossed aside or mistreated or just not appreciated for how much you put into it and how that can affect you. So that was fun. The Haunting of Deck 12, pretty lame episode. Yay for having Naomi again, but the episode in general was just very forgettable. I don't even remember like exactly how it is. I just didn't care. Moving on to Unimatrix Zero. I like that we got to see more of Seven without her little eye thing. But I thought that her love interest in there didn't have any chemistry with it. Let me know if you thought they had any chemistry, but I felt like they had no chemistry. The other thing is that it once again strains believability even with the Star Trek technology that people on opposite sides of the quadrant can somehow meet in this digital realm in real time and have real-time interactions, and somehow the Borg Queen not be able to access it or be aware of it. Like, I'm just not buying it even with the explanations that you gave. So, and then apparently that was the season-ending episode, but a part 2, or, with a part 2 to start the next season. So, kind of surprising there, but overall, I think I like season 5 overall better, but a couple of my favorite episodes were still in this, and I, as always, highly recommend all the Star Treks, including Star Trek Voyager Season 6. So 2 thumbs up. That's all I have for this one. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you at the next one. Bye!